Today's project is made possible by the brand new Kreg Pocket Hole Jig XL. This new jig makes it so you can do pocket holes in 4x4 posts and material. And as soon as I saw this new jig, I knew I had to create this amazing hammock chair stand. I've had this idea for so long, and now with the extra large pocket hole jig, I was able to make it work. The extra large Kreg pocket hole jig is just one of the 8 new tools that Kreg just released. They have new things for your cabinet solutions, including this great jig that will hold your cabinet door while you attach the door hinges. We've got a new shelf pin jig. We've got these awesome project blocks that will rotate up to a paint tip, so you can use it for painting or just holding your products sturdy. I used them while sanding on my last project. They were super helpful. I love this 90-degree driver bit, so you can get in still using pocket holes on those really tight spaces. This is such a handy little thing for drilling straight holes. Super simple panel carrier, so that when you're carrying large sheet goods all by yourself, this comes in super handy. And even a drill bit to allow you to pre-drill and then swap out and drive all of your pocket holes to do simple joinery instead of the pocket hole. But today's project for our hammock swing, we are focusing on the extra large pocket holes, because that is what it's going to take to attach these 4x4s together to have a really awesome hammock swing stand. And we're going to utilize that in conjunction with these 4-inch pocket hole screws. These are Protect Coat, so they are great for outdoor. To get started, I'm going to be going over to my miter saw and cutting all of my legs. Now the legs, I am just using 6-foot long 4x4 posts, and I made sure to get ones that were good for ground contact, since this will be sitting out permanently in the yard, and they're going to be cut at a 15-degree angle. Now obviously the 6-foot long ones are 72 inches, so once I cut them down at an angle, it's going to be just slightly shy of 72 inches. So the most important thing is to make sure that all 4 legs are the exact same length once you get those 15-degree angles put on it. So I'm going to head over to the miter saw and get started. And now for the trickiest part is going to be cutting the next line on these 4x4 posts. And you can't do this on a miter saw. I'm going to use my circular saw and then cut through the rest with my hand saw in order to get the right angle. And I found this is really just the easiest way to do it. And it works up a little sweat, so I call it a workout as well. So with these 2 boards for my legs facing each other, so that the angles will create a flat on the top and a flat on the bottom when they're in an A-frame, what I'm going to do is measure over from the edge of each of these. Now I'm putting a 3.5-inch wide board, because it's a 4x4 board, on top of this. So I basically just want to leave on either side 1 3/4 of an inch. So I just mark that. Okay, then I'm going to use my square to go at a 90-degree angle from that mark to the edge of the board. So the cut here is 15-degree angle, but I'm going off of that to a full 90. And then I'm going to cut this line, so when they go together, I've only got the top is going to be 3.5 inches wide, the bottom will be splayed out perfectly, and I'll attach this all together. Okay, now that I'm all sweaty, I've got these 2 cut. I made sure to set my circular saw to the deepest it would go, which is just over 2 inches, so I only had to cut through the very end. And I used a combination of the saw that I have from a miter box, but because it has this lip on it, the last little bit, I used my flush cut saw, and it cut through it. This is a little bit harder to cut through because it is treated lumber, because it is going to be staying outside. I got the treated 4x4 posts for the legs, so it's a little moist. But it doesn't take too much time to cut through those. And now it's time to use the pocket hole jig. So with this, I'm going to be adding pocket holes to one side of this angled cut that I just made. And then what we're going to do is attach them together like this, and it'll create a nice A-frame. And then after that, I'm going to add pocket holes on the underside, but I'm going to have to flip this over because the pocket holes that go in at the top here to hold the two together will be in the top portion of the block because the pocket hole will go in at an angle to come out in the middle part here. So if I flip it over and put the pocket holes on the other side, it's going to not bump up against the pocket holes that are holding the two together. Okay, so that is prepped and ready for the top to be attached later. And just a quick tip, if you can't figure out why your bit's not going in, check to make sure that it's not in reverse. That's what I was having a challenge with. Also, big knots. If you're having a struggle, it could be a large knot in the way. But the Craig Jig extra large one is really very similar to the 300 series. It does not have a spacer because you're just going to use them together to do a 4x4 post. But you can break them apart. It takes a little bit of work. I'm not going to break it apart now because I don't need it. And snap it back together. And it loosens up the more you do it. But before I stand this up and repeat for the second leg, I am going to be cutting a 2x4 that will brace the two apart. Now, it is a little tricky, this process, because I can tell you what the plans should be, but the plans say this will be a 72-inch board, right? And that just depends on how long your board is and how long your angle is. So what I did is I cut the 18-inch piece, and then I started with measuring 29 inches up, and I braced it in there to see if that was about right, and then moved it up or down as needed to make sure that it was even on both sides, and that's just going to hold this angle. I mean, it's pretty sturdy, but of course, you know, you want to have extra sturdiness in case of strong winds or anything like that. Okay, so the 2x4 brace that is going to be attached between the legs is going to be using a pocket hole as well, and I'm going to drill it on the longer side because that will be the underside of it, so you won't see it when it is attached. Now, the extra large pocket hole jig does allow you to use 2x4 or 4x4 lumber, but the drill bit is really big. So since I have a regular pocket hole, I decided I'm going to use it for my 2x4 lumber. You don't have to. You can continue to use the other one. Just know you're going to have a little bit bigger of a hole, which is totally fine. I'm hiding this underneath. But since I have this system, I'm going to use it. So I make sure to swap out my drill bit, and this is for the 1.5-inch thick material. And I'm ready to go. First side is done. I just repeat that all over again to get the second side before I can attach them together. Two legs are done. I've put them back on the table because I'm going to be attaching these braces to the bottom here. Now they're going to go, I'm going to have to move these apart, flush to the bottom of the angle inside of the leg. I'm also making sure they're flush with the top of the angle, which means they'll stick out a little bit on the back side, the bottom back side of the angle, but I think that's going to be less of a trip hazard than if they stick out all the way. If you're very motivated, you could actually rip a 15-degree angle on these, but I have a feeling the grass is going to grow up around them and it won't be a big deal. But these are going to hold the legs so they don't splay out in case they get hit with anything, and give it a little bit more sturdiness. And then once I get these attached to both sides, I will drop it down to the ground and put the top on. Now I'm moving on to the top. I've got a untreated 4x4 post because it is going to go on top, so it doesn't need to be treated for ground contact. I do plan on sealing this all just with an outdoor sealer, just like I would any pergola or outdoor furniture. So I'm going to cut this down to size, and then I'm going to be cutting a rounded detail on both ends to give it that pergola look. Now, the easiest way I found to cut that rounded detail is with my bandsaw. There's not a jigsaw blade long enough to cut through this 3.5 inch thick 4x4. If you do not have a bandsaw, you could just cut it on the miter saw, or like we did with the other angle with your circular saw, at an angle to still give it a little bit of a detailing so it's not just a post on both ends. The frame is all done, and this thing is nice and sturdy. Now, I could leave it like it is, and it would be totally fine, but I want to make it look like a little pergola. And so I'm going to take 2x6 boards and add some slats to the top of this and give it a real good pergola feel. It'll also offer some shade during the day, as long as the sun is not directly above you. And to do that, I'm going to be using 2x6 boards. And the plans I have set to use 32-inch long pieces, because that way you can get 3 of the slats, and we're going to do 6 across the top from one board. But I'm actually doing mine at 36 inches long. And the reason for that is I had a bunch of offcuts from another project, so I could use those, and I figured why cut them down if I have a full 36 inches. And that is almost the full width of this base, so I think it kind of balances it very nicely. Now, if you do want the little bit wider slats or longer, you can do that by buying 10-foot boards and still get 3 per board, or you can go with a 32-inch. So I'm going to cut these slats and notch out a 1.5-inch notch so that they will sit directly on top of this post on the top. And then I'll secure them with some pocket holes. I'm also going to add my curved detail here to all of those boards to really give it that pergola look. Now, if you have a jigsaw, you can definitely use that on these 2x boards, because they're only 1.5 inches thick. I'm going to continue to use my bandsaw because I have it. Now, if you did cut this one just at an angle because you didn't have the ability to cut this with a bandsaw, you can also just cut the 2x6s at an angle as well. It will match it, the style of it, it'll look really good, and it'll be a lot quicker. I've got all of my pieces for the top cut. I notched them out with my circular saw, and then I drilled pocket holes in the back. Now, I found the 2 prettiest boards to go on the ends, and I put the pocket holes, 2 pocket holes on the inside. Now, for all the other boards, I drilled 1 pocket hole on either side and made sure that they were opposite. So that'll give it strength from both directions. So I'm going to measure out where these all get attached, and then I'm going to attach them with my 2.5-inch Kreg pocket hole screws, making sure that I get the blue coat ones for weather, and then I'm ready to hang a swing. It looks so good. Now, excitingly enough, it's time to hang the swing. And I bought this swing, and I'll put the link to this one in the description below, that it actually is supposed to be on a bar, and then it has a single hold in the center. So you could use it and just wrap the strap around here and hang it, but it's going to put it quite a bit lower. But if you have really young kids and you want to do that, it might work. But it's going to make the swing spin, and I really didn't want it coming from a single point. The whole point of this was so it's open and airy. So I have bought heavy-duty carabiner hooks instead to put on the ends of my swing. And then I bought these beefy screw eyes, and it says it's a 205-pound working load, and I'm going to drill in here and hang them, screw them in here so then I can hang the swing. Also the great thing about the carabiners is I can pop it in when I want to go out and swing, but I can bring this in when I am not using it to keep it protected. Even though it is okay to use outdoors, I don't want to leave it outside. It'll keep bugs and things out of the swing. And so you can leave the stand out and just clip in the swing when you're ready for enjoyment. I got them mostly screwed in, but I am going to probably have to wait for my husband to help me finish screwing these massive screw eyes in, because it definitely requires some muscle. I got them in most of the way though, so I wanted to give you a sneak peek. So we'll take the swing. Oops. And snap it in. And that'll keep the swing nice and wide. And now this is my absolute favorite new place in the house. I have got it under the porch so that I can let the treated lumber dry out for 4 to 6 weeks before I apply an outdoor sealer to it. But I am okay waiting because I can sit and enjoy it here on the porch until that's done. If you like this project, check out housefulofhandmade.com for the complete build plans and even more projects for your home, and hit subscribe to follow along for great DIY projects.